Be smart, it's your money.
The Confident Homeowner with Matt Dabara.
All right, everybody, it's Matt Dabara, the Undercover Contractor. Welcome back to the Confident Homeowner Podcast. Today I have with me somebody who I think is very inspiring. His name is Dino Giancanelli, and he is a 35-year landscape contractor veteran with DG Landworks. He's the owner and the face of the company. So welcome to the podcast, Dino.
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me.
So today we're going to be talking about the outdoor oasis. Everybody right now with COVID happening is spending more time outdoors. They want to know how to maximize outdoor space, how to spend more time outdoors, and really just enjoy it more, enjoy your home more. So I wanted to bring Dino here to talk about some of the things he's seeing. What are the common trends? And then also kind of what you're seeing and noticing that works, what isn't working, and kind of just your tips from doing this for over 35 years.
Great.
So first question I have for you is what have you seen kind of as a shift with COVID in terms of like your business? Have you noticed certain types of projects are more common? Have you noticed an emphasis more on outdoor work? What have you seen kind of boots in the ground?
Yeah, I have. I've noticed, people wanting to spend more time outside, obviously being, stuck at home for a period of time and wanting to be home more. People, building spaces in the backyard that are enjoyable, usable, similar to like spaces in their house. So we're doing a lot of, patios, a lot of cook centers, outdoor kitchens, a lot of areas with couches and fire pits, and something that we're recreating rooms that you would be in the house and doing it outside so they can go and enjoy outside.
And are you noticing that there's an emphasis on more? Are you noticing that the designs are being more kind of spaced out? Like, are you seeing that they're trying to maximize more of the space? Or are you seeing that the design concepts? But basically, what I'm asking is, has the design concepts shifted more with COVID? Are you seeing things kind of being more spread apart? Are people making permanent changes to the designs based on what's happened?
I think so. I think they're focusing more on usable areas that they can go out and really spend time in. And, I've always said, I've had clients tell me, well, I don't really want to spend a lot of money in the backyard because we don't go out there. And I always say, well, you don't go out there because you don't have something that's inviting, something that is enjoyable. And I see designers a lot kind of going that way and creating different areas to be in. Not just in the past, we used to just kind of do a whole design in one big area. And it was kind of, how could I put it? A lot of, not individual areas where you can go and, someone could read a book, someone else can, you can go and cook outside. And we're doing a lot of that, different spaces. Yeah, it's a little different. It is for sure.
I was doing a little bit of research on the topic because we were getting a fair amount of requests around this subject. And so are you finding that people are putting in more water fountains to relax?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's for sure. We're almost, I would say 80% of our projects we're putting some type of water feature in from, wow. Waterfalls, sheer descents, different, fountains, ponds, because, ponds were really popular for a while and they kind of died out. But now that people are home, that's one of the things in our business that we probably get the best feedback out of. People love water features. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm finding that even for me personally, I'm finding that they're more popular now. That element of just kind of being able to detach and relax. Like there's an emphasis on a design that's I'm even seeing, and I'm curious if you are too, like just even a bigger emphasis on some of the smells.
Yes.
Like,
oh yeah, it's funny you say that. I just had a client. Talking about that, about different jasmines, different types of plants that we could plant in certain areas to provide smells. And that's where it gets into creating a really nice landscape. A good designer, a good contractor that does designing will be thinking about that type of stuff, right? Where smells are coming in and out of houses or seating areas. We see that a lot. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess for anyone listening, if you're imagining that I'm a homeowner and I want to create an outdoor oasis, but I haven't done it yet because I'm either not quite sure where to start or I have some ideas, but I don't really know what the next step is. I mean, how would you guide somebody along? Like, what would you say is what should they know beforehand in terms of, what should they have had figured out? And then in your opinion, do you feel like everyone needs a designer, or can some of them find the right, landscape contractor? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can't speak for all contractors, but myself, I started out and I dabbled in some designing, and then there was a point where I realized, look, I need to deal with people that focus on designing, designers that's their profession. I could never be as good as them when it comes to designing. Now, I'm sure there's contractors out there that can design and do it just as well as a designer. So myself, I always recommend going to a designer. Obviously, that's budget. There's a lot to do with budget there, and if they can afford it. But if you have a designer involved, I think there's two things. I think you can, the cost of having a designer it saves you in the long run for me, because when you have a contractor that's trying to build what you want, and if they don't get into the ground what you want, you have to make changes, and that costs money. Where if you have the designer come in and the designer does it the way you want and spends the time with you, you don't have those as many change orders, and you get things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's funny. I have the same belief. I have my belief around this subject is this. It's that if you find the right the goal is to find the right designer. Yeah. Because there's in my opinion, different designers for different budgets. Mm-hmm. But I think even on a small, simple project, having at the very least maybe a design consultation and putting and peeling together some of your ideas, I find that almost never is it a waste of money as long as you've found the right person, in my opinion, because sure. We can, even if it comes to a point where you end up phasing the project and you're like, okay, this is phase 1, this is phase 2. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do this now because I have, saved up X amount of dollars. I can't do the whole thing, but having, and I'm sure you'd probably agree with this, is having that full concept means you can, install irrigation stub outs. You know where to put your sleeves. You know where to kind of, I should run the gas line now because I'm already getting inspections for this, even though that's part of phase 2. Yeah. Are you able to find that there's a big benefit in having a plan, even if it's phased out?
Sure. Oh, for sure. I mean, it's like I say, that the money that you spend not having design extra, it far outweighs the money you'd spend on a designer. That's what I've seen. So I think having the designer is a big benefit. Definitely. We work with a lot of different designers, and we found that people are just happier in general when you get a good plan. I mean, it just makes sense, right? You have a good plan and someone who's a professional at doing that plan and knows what they're doing, and then a good contractor to implement it, especially when the designer and the contractor work together and they know how each other, how they run their businesses. That really makes a difference.
And do you feel like let's say, I guess let me take a step back for a minute. So what, if you're considering, if I'm listening and I'm considering an outdoor oasis, mm-hmm. What are some of the elements that I may want to look at and consider? Like, what if you had to name off kind of like 3, 4, 5 things that I want to think about? Do I want this or do I not want this? What would you kind of say are most common?
Well, that's tough if you're talking about, because personally, I love certain things, right? But that's not for everybody. I love cooking, so I love an outdoor kitchen. Okay. For me, outdoor kitchen is especially coming from an Italian background like you, we spend a lot of time in the kitchen. So, yes. I have an outdoor kitchen, and it's like, we're out there more than we're in the house. So that's something that I love. But I think just having areas that you can go out, and not just like in the old days where you'd have a glass, patio table with some chairs around it. I think more of a comfortable area that you have couches and seating areas, something for warmth, something when it's hot for, keep you cool. That is like the key to getting people outside. And then from there, it's a matter of, when you get into planting and what every client wants, if they like more greenery, more hardscape, that's really makes a difference in if someone's happy and with what they're getting.
So I think, and this is really, I like this. This makes a lot of sense. So I guess if I'm a homeowner and I'm kind of thinking about, because sometimes I find, at least on my end, I found a lot of clients don't take action because they're just like, well, I can't envision it. I don't know how good it could be, right? So they're almost, it prevents them from calling a landscape designer or even a landscape contractor who can then refer the designer and say, hey, start here,
Yeah.
based on your budget and what you're looking to do. So I guess what I'm hearing is making some considerations around how you're using the space. So are you going to be cooking? Yes, no.
Yes.
Is an outdoor fire feature important? Yes, no. Are you going to be entertaining? Are you going to be sitting around there? What are some of the most common? So it sounds like outdoor kitchens are pretty common.
Yes.
Are you finding fire pits, fireplaces, fire features pretty common?
Yes. Oh, for sure. We've been installing probably a fire feature on almost every job that we're doing now, something to, because, just to keep people comfortable outside and something to sit around. So yeah, a lot of water features, a lot of fire features, and outdoor, we're seeing a lot of outdoor entertainment. So a lot of outdoor TVs, a lot of speaker systems outdoor, so people can, showing people how you can install a speaker system where you have speakers throughout the yard, so the music can be on like level 3 and you could hear it everywhere instead of, the neighbors complain, and just stuff like that where homeowners don't quite understand that stuff and they don't understand how you can do certain things and make it work where they thought in the past, well, I don't want to have music outside because it's too loud. Well, just little tricks like that, I guess,
And are you finding, in terms of, because I know you guys do pools too, are you finding that people are putting in more pools, less pools, above ground, below ground? Like, what are you noticing on the pool side?
Yeah, we are seeing more pools. We're seeing a lot of pool remodels too. A lot of people that want to update their pools because they're spending more time outside, right? Yeah. And they see their tile chipping away and plaster. So yeah, we're seeing that too. Yeah.
What would you say is the most kind of surprising design element that you're seeing based on, and I know this one's gonna but like, what are you seeing where you're like, I'm doing this maybe 2 out of 10 projects and I didn't think I'd be doing these? Is there a certain kind of outdoor area or feature that you're like, I didn't think we'd be doing as many of these?
Yeah, well, one of them would be, we used to do a lot of water features. So we did a lot of koi ponds back in the day. This was probably 10, 15 years ago. And it kind of died out for a while. And to see water features come back in, which I love, is great. So that's kind of surprising because they weren't as popular for a while. But I guess the first thing I think of is materials. We're working a lot with metals, a lot of corten walls and stuff like that. So we're doing a lot of different stuff that's a little unusual with natural finishes and rusting on it and stuff like that. But I think if I was to say anything is outdoor kitchens, we've really done a lot. Outdoor kitchens for us has been, something. In the past, we'd always do just barbecues, 8 feet by 3 feet and a barbecue, maybe a refrigerator. Now we're doing full blown ice makers and, the whole thing where they're outdoor kitchen, sometimes nicer than the kitchen in the home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense if you have the space.
Yeah, that's the key, is have the space. And then sometimes we've done some that we don't have the space, but a good designer is able to fit something in and make it usable. Because, when you're using an outdoor kitchen, anything, right? Whenever you're doing anything, you want it to be convenient or you're not going to use it. So you've got to really know what the client, what their levels of cooking are, if they love to barbecue, if they love certain types of foods, right? So you want to have the right stuff for them so they want to go out there and use it, and they're not running back and forth into the house to get stuff. So some people don't like refrigerators, don't need refrigerators. Other people do. Ice makers, warming drawers. I mean,
You seeing pizza ovens?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, that's one of the things we're installing a pizza oven now. We just had it shipped from Italy, and took a while to get it, but we're in the process of installing that now. So we're seeing I love pizza ovens. We probably installed 3 pizza ovens in the last 2 months.
Wow. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I'm a big, we cook a lot of pizzas at my house. So
Me too. I built a lot of those with my dad as a kid. So, to see him come back was good, but it was, it brought up some memories for me of like, that was
the pizza ovens are great. There's a little bit of a responsibility, I think, from a contractor's end to know when you install a pizza oven to be there for the client to show them how to use it, because there's a big learning curve.
Yes.
And if you just install a pizza oven for a client and leave them with it, they're not going to be happy, right? They've got to learn how to use it, and you got to show them how to use it. So there's a little bit of responsibility there when you install one.
Yeah, there's definitely not an owner's manual, so to speak. It's not, you kind of have to, it's a little more hands-on, but that's fun, you know?
Yeah, it's great. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah.
In terms of, so if I'm a homeowner and I'm thinking, okay, I guess one of the big questions that I get a lot, and I think would be helpful to cover, is the difference between things that are custom versus things that are pre-made. Because I find that in some instances, based on budget, you know, like for example, sometimes I find like a fire feature, sometimes it's better to get one that is pre-made, you know, because the budget doesn't allow for it. Like it wouldn't make sense sometimes to spend 30 or 40% of your budget here and then not be able to do much else with the space. And so how would you, and I know this is typically done on the designer side, and to get homeowners that are listening thinking about this, what would you say are some ways to think about, well, should I spend money on a custom pizza oven, or should I just be looking at something like, you know, I have a friend who got one. I don't even know where he got it, but you know, it's like I got a little wood burning, you know, kit one, and he enjoys that. How would you say, as you're thinking about improving the outdoor space, the decisions between things that are pre-made where you can save a lot of money and still have some benefit versus kind of the really, you know, custom high-end stuff?
Yeah. Well, obviously, you know, if the budget's going to kind of determine where you're going, but you know, a lot of the pre-made stuff, there's some good stuff out there. I think the key to that is if you're going to buy pre-made, you got to do a lot of research. I think that's the key, because if you don't do research, you're going to end up with something and like I was saying, you really have to be able to enjoy what you're using. If you're not going to use it, right? So if you get something that's just not working properly, you're not going to, no matter how much money you save, you're not going to use it. So I think that's the key to pre-made stuff. I have, you know, a client now that has a fire pit they want to install, and he's he likes quality, but he wants to buy a pre-made one. And there are some out there, but I'm talking to him about, look at, you know, we can build it, and we can build it with better materials and exactly how you want it. And that extra money is going to be worth it in the long run. And he agreed with it, actually. And so there's circumstances where, yeah, for sure, pre-made's okay. As long as you do your research, that's the key. You know, I wouldn't just hop on Amazon and buy anything. I would definitely either talk to people that have had them before and find a good solid company that will, you know, warranty stuff if it doesn't, you know, work right. Because, you know, if you have a good contractor, you don't have to worry about that stuff. They'll come back and they'll take care of things if they go wrong, you know. But if you have a company, you have a contractor just putting something in that's pre-built, the contractor's, you know, usually only responsible for the installation. After that, you know, if something goes wrong, you've got to go back to the company. So
I like that. I mean, I guess I knew that, but I wasn't thinking about that, is really making sure that you research what you're doing, and obviously the warranty factor, because I'm thinking about that. Like if there's anything and they call you up, you know, it's on something you built, you're happily going to go back. But if it was a kit, you're like, hey, you know, this was that makes a lot of sense. So in terms of what are you noticing? What are kind of boots on the ground trends that you're seeing with the actual landscaping? Are you seeing that people are planting more trees? Is it, you know, are they putting in more fences? Is it more privacy driven? Like what are you seeing now on that side of things?
Yeah, I'm seeing more privacy driven, because people are spending more time in their yard, so they want privacy. And then I'm seeing, you know, we see a lot of native planting, a lot of stuff, a lot of water conservation. So a lot of the designers we're working with are they're utilizing a lot of plants that are, you know, drought tolerant and native from the area. We are seeing a lot of trees, a lot of, you know, sticking with a little more drought tolerant trees too. That's kind of a big trend going on, you know, with, you know, everything, you know, not a lot of rain. So, we're seeing another thing that we're seeing is a lot of, rain gardens. We're installing rain gardens, and that's becoming more popular, especially with the cities, they're requiring them. You know, a lot of cities are making us put in pretty big rain gardens. So that's another thing that we're doing. That's a change from before.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Would you prefer a client reach out to you directly first, or do you typically like, is it easier for you to, because I think sometimes clients are like, well, do I go to a contractor? Do I go to a designer first? Like, and do you find that for certain projects, if they reach out to you as a landscape contractor, that's better and easier than starting with a designer? Or do you always feel like it's easier to have them start with a designer and then come to you to kind of put their vision?
We work both ways. We do. We
Yeah.
have designers that refer
Mm-hmm.
clients, to us, but I would always prefer them to come to me.
Yeah.
Just, so I mean that's something that, because I feel like if they come to us, they're in the right hands and we could steer them in the right direction. We have several clients that have come to us, and then we'll refer them to several designers and say, here you can see these different designers, see what they do. And so I mean, either way, the designers we work with, I'm very comfortable with, or I wouldn't work with them. So, I'm comfortable either way, but obviously coming to us would be ideal.
And I guess the reason I asked was because at that point you can kind of ask a few questions and understand maybe who the best designer is, and it might be a little, they might find that easier than trying to find a designer on their own. And because at that point, if the designer says no, they're turning down business. Whereas for you, it's kind of like, we find that too on our end, like it's much easier to give a non-biased, because at that point you really care about the end goal. You care about the client being taken care of and having a design that's buildable and clear and concise, right? Because then it comes back to you. So that's I think an interesting to point out for any homeowner doing research is, a good landscape contractor would be more than happy to field your call and understand your project a little bit and say, okay, great. Do you find that there's actually jobs where you're like, no, we can definitely do this without a designer? Do you find that there are some, or do you genuinely feel like if a client calls up and says, hey, I've got a small backyard, I just want to freshen up some planting and do a few things, do you still refer them to a designer, or do you think it's some of those you go out on and or your team goes out on? And
so your first question I do feel like there's jobs that we could take, and without a designer, but we usually don't.
Got it.
Yeah, we usually don't, because I feel that the end product comes out better.
Yeah.
And I think that clients are happier when someone spends some real time, someone who's all they do is focus on design, where, we're focusing on installation.
Yeah.
And the design part is, of course, we know some designing, we know, because we've been in the business, but a designer is constantly, a good designer is always looking to become better and change things, new materials, new, just new designs, and especially with all the different designs out there from, different areas in the world, people coming to our country and having, different types of designs from different parts of the world, from Mediterranean to, designers are constantly doing that, where, to be honest, a contractor doesn't have time to do that.
I agree, and I'm glad we kind of circle back to this, because I think it's worth really emphasizing to any homeowner, because I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that it's so hard to understand how much goes into, because it seems almost like, a designer shows up, and if they're good, they talk to you for a little bit and they go, all right, here's what I think, boom, boom, boom. And it's hard to understand how much went into their ability to be able to do that. Yeah. It's almost like, us on the install side of things, right? Where it's like, we do it and it makes it look easy. And I don't know if you've ever had clients that are like, oh, that looks easy. Maybe next time I'll try that. And I'm like, it's 30 years they've been doing that, not to say you can't do it. Yeah. I know that there's plenty of handy clients we've had, but it's on the design side of things, because it's, like you say, it's about studying the styles. It's about studying the trends and having seen all these hard to solve problems over a 20-year career, like that ability to just kind of, know what to do. I think is really important. And I would agree. I think even if you have a small, simple space, starting there with the first step, but I like that we highlighted, calling a good landscape contractor first, because that's what we love. Like, especially in the masonry and concrete world, if they want to do something that requires really extensive designing, I prefer that we understand it first, to be able to save them the time of the kind of the goose chase, so to speak.
That makes sense because the ones that we work with, the designers, each one has their own kind of feel, right? So if you come to me and say, hey, I'm looking to do an outdoor kitchen, I have one designer that's kind of set up a little better for doing that, or does some really cool stuff, and I can refer them to the right. That makes sense, sure. Where if you just go to the designer, you're going to get their feel and what they do and their style. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and I think it's harder for for a designer. It's always it might be a little tempting because it's like, well, I can do that, but most designers probably aren't studying all the other designers that are out there.
Sure.
Whereas on our end, we if we get the plans, we're like, okay, well, this person's just a little more emphasis on all the different countertop options and kind of configurations for outdoor kitchens. Whereas this one's still great, not bad, but definitely a little bit of a better end product here, so we can refer them to that.
Yeah.
And then are you seeing more gardens? Are you seeing more?
When you say gardens, as in
like actual vegetables and fruits and
almost every project.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. It sounds like I'm being repetitive, but really we do a lot of. I would say not every project, but I'd say 80% of projects we're doing gardens somewhere. Yeah. Yeah, okay. And it might have to do with the designers we're working with, but I know that the homeowners, most of them are requesting some type of a garden. We're doing one right now with. He's a big tomato guy. He's a big tomato guy, and we're making the soil has to be right for tomatoes, and it's got to have the right sun, and so that's him. You got to be careful. Some people they really focus on something, and to you it might not mean anything, but to them it's huge, right? Yeah. So as a contractor, you got to know when you're doing certain work. I tell my guys that it's so important that when you're planting something, it's got to be planted right, not too high, not too low. Some of these things to the average person seems like nothing, but to a guy that's a tomato enthusiast, right, it's got to be perfect, right? So, we see that a lot. We're seeing gardens.
And so I love that, and I think I'm like that with cucumbers. I got a cucumber thing. Like I'm like the amount of stuff I know about cucumbers is ridiculous. My grandfather was a tomato guy, and so I think that kind of. But to me, cucumbers, I'm literally, forget it. I'm like, I'm so weird about it.
Yeah, that's funny.
But you didn't know that about me.
No, didn't know that.
But so I guess one thing that I think would be helpful to cover before we wrap up here is. So if I'm a homeowner, I'm doing research. How do I, because you see a lot of things, right? If I'm doing research online, you see, we design in-house. So some companies they do the design, in-house. Some of them, there's different size landscape contractors and different specialties. What are some tips you'd give to any homeowner looking for a landscape contractor to kind of maybe a few questions to ask, or just how would you say that they can better equip their search of finding the right landscape contractor?
I think, obviously, referrals and looking at the work they've done. We found that, I really like the idea of we have relationships with our designers. If you call on a contractor and they work with designers, I think talking to the designers too makes it, because the designer is someone who they want their project. They want what they're putting on paper. They want it to turn out to be the best it could be. So if a designer is going to give a referral to a contractor, I think that's probably the best referral you can get. I think homeowners obviously too, because they're, but a designer knows what they're doing. It has to be done right. You can't, a homeowner, they see what's going on, but they don't really know how things are being installed. Not all, some do, but I mean, like underground, making sure everything's right. Like you say, putting sleeves in, all the little stuff that no one really thinks about is the important stuff. Making sure down the road you can, if you need to install more stuff, you have stuff under your driveways, you've done stuff right size piping, all of that. I think that type of stuff, a designer will know for sure if that contractor is doing it right. So I think doing your research and a good contractor shouldn't be hiding from giving referrals or talking to designers that they work with. So I think that would be the main thing. And then personality too, I think is big. I think you've got to be able to, deal with that contractor, because you're going to be dealing with them on a daily basis. There might even be some times where you have disagreements. So you've got to, I think, talking to them face to face and that's important too.
Now, how do you, and there might not be an easy way to do this in your eyes, but how would you distinguish? I mean, you've been doing this for 35 years, probably more than 35 years, but let's say 35 years. You're passionate about this. Like I know your backstory, your lineage, how you got into this. I mean, how do you distinguish that between somebody who's maybe been doing it for a few years and it's a leg or an arm of their business, but not the heart and soul? Like, how do you that's one question that I'm fascinated with. And, a lot of people that I bring on the podcast are that this is what they love. This is what they do. And how would you say, like, for example, you would be able to spot if you got a quote at your home, if you called landscape contractors, you would be able to tell within 5 minutes, 10 minutes if they're the real deal. And if they,
sure.
Like, what are some things you would look for? Like, how do you spot that? Because I think that's one of the things that is hard for homeowners is if they do click on the personality side, but maybe the expertise isn't there, or, the expertise is there, but personality wise, that person just has to be, or happens to be a little bit more just mellow and not as conversational. Like what would you be looking for?
I think honesty is the big thing, right? We all don't know. There's no way to know everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell my guys, I have a guy, Preston, who's working for me, who's a sales guy. And I always tell him, when he's going and talking to designer, whoever he's talking to, be honest. If you don't know it, say you don't know it, but we'll find someone that knows it, or we'll, that's when to find someone that says that knows everything and they've only been in the business for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, that's a red flag right there. You've got to, honesty is key to the whole thing. I think that's important. Personality, I think, is big. Because I think a contractor's relationship with the homeowner, a good contractor should always be talking to the homeowner. There should be a relationship there. And if you have any type of an issue there, that's going to be a red flag too. You can't substitute experience. So I know when I look back at when I first started, I mean, we were doing our best, but if you don't know, you don't know, So as a contractor, you got to be willing to hire people that know, and that goes back to the designer, right? Like, as a contractor, you got to be willing to say, hey, look, we need a designer on this project. And I think those are the key things for me, at least. I'd be able to spot someone right off the bat just by the way that they're trying to tell me they know how to do something and they really don't.
I love it.
So.
Well, Dino, thanks for being here. Hopefully we've inspired some homeowners to build their outdoor oasis. And I admire your passion, and I love contractors that are here because they love this business and this industry. And so thank you for being on the show.
Oh, great being here. Thanks for having me.